The morning started like any other on Good Morning America. Fans across the country tuned in, coffee in hand, expecting the usual blend of celebrity interviews, news, and lighthearted segments. But what unfolded that morning would quickly make headlines far beyond the typical entertainment news cycle. Brad Pitt, one of Hollywood's most recognized faces, was scheduled for an interview with George Stephanopoulos. Anticipation was high. Pitt had recently been in the spotlight for his latest film and a string of personal projects, including humanitarian work and his art ventures. Viewers expected a charming, witty conversation, full of the charisma that had made Pitt a household name. However, the interview took a sharp turn almost immediately. George Stephanopoulos, known for his incisive questioning, began by asking Brad about a controversial rumor circulating about his personal life. While most of the questions were professional, one, in particular, struck a nerve. "Brad, some sources have suggested tension on the sets of your recent projects. How do you respond to allegations that you've been difficult to work with?" George asked, leaning slightly forward, his tone calm but piercing. Brad's eyes narrowed. A faint smile played at the corner of his lips, but there was an unmistakable tension in his posture. "Well, George," he replied slowly, "I think it's important to separate rumor from reality. The people I work with know me well, and that's what matters." George pressed further. "But don't you think the public deserves to know the truth? With your influence, shouldn't transparency be part of your responsibility?" At this point, the studio fell silent. The usual hum of cameras and teleprompters seemed to fade as Brad's calm exterior began to crack. "You know," he said, voice steady but firm, "I respect journalism, but I also respect boundaries. There's a line between curiosity and intrusion. And I think we're approaching it." The exchange, though civil in words, carried an undercurrent of tension that the cameras captured in every subtle gesture. Brad's jaw tightened, his eyes flicked toward the production team as if seeking an exit strategy, while George remained poised, clearly unwilling to let the moment slip without a response. "Boundaries are important, Brad," George replied, leaning back slightly. "But as someone in the public eye, your actions and your words matter. The audience wants honesty, and evasion only fuels speculation." Brad took a deep breath, and the quiet intensity in the studio became palpable. For a brief moment, it seemed neither would yield. Then, in a move that shocked both viewers and staff, Brad leaned forward, his voice low but unmistakably firm. "George, I came here to talk about my work, my projects, and the things I'm proud of. Not to dissect every aspect of my private life. If the goal is entertainment at the expense of my dignity, then perhaps this conversation isn't productive." The studio fell completely silent. George raised an eyebrow, clearly unaccustomed to having his line of questioning met with such direct resistance. Producers whispered urgently off camera, and the normally smooth rhythm of GMA faltered. It was then that Brad made a decision that would make headlines within hours. Standing from his seat, he addressed the crew with measured calm, yet unmistakable authority. "Thank you for having me, but I think it's best if we end this here." With that, he turned and walked toward the exit, leaving George and the studio stunned. The teleprompters continued to scroll, the cameras rolled, but the interview was effectively over. Viewers at home were left in disbelief, tweeting and posting reactions almost immediately as clips of the tense exchange circulated across social media platforms. Public reaction was swift. News outlets reported the incident as a television shocker, with analysts debating whether Brad's exit was justified or a PR misstep. Fans flooded forums defending his choice to stand his ground, while critics argued that public figures must expect scrutiny. Insiders from the studio later revealed that behind the scenes, discussions erupted about the best way to handle the abrupt end to the interview. Producers scrambled to adjust the live broadcast, transitioning to pre-recorded segments while the network issued a brief statement. "Good Morning America respects all our guests. While today's interview with Brad Pitt ended prematurely, we hope to have him back soon under circumstances that allow for a full and open conversation." For Brad Pitt, the morning was far from a defeat. It was a declaration of boundaries, a reminder that even celebrities with global fame have the right to control the narrative of their personal lives. Yet, it also set the stage for an ongoing debate about media ethics, celebrity privacy, and the often blurred line between public interest and intrusion. As viewers speculated on what had really been said, and the world waited for Brad's next statement, one thing was clear: Good Morning America would never forget the morning Brad Pitt walked out, leaving a stunned studio and a buzzing audience behind. This was more than a missed interview, it was a cultural moment, a clash between Hollywood star power and journalistic persistence that would be discussed in headlines and talk shows for weeks to come. The fallout from Brad Pitt's sudden exit from Good Morning America was immediate and intense. Social media exploded with reactions, hashtags like #Brad walks out and #GMA heated exchange trended within hours. Memes, opinion threads, and viral clips flooded platforms, each dissecting his every gesture, word, and facial expression from the interview. Industry insiders revealed that the abrupt ending had caught even veteran producers off guard. "We've seen tense interviews before, but nothing like this," one executive admitted. Brad was polite, composed, but firm. You could see he had reached his limit. It's rare for someone of his stature to simply walk out on live television. By midday, major news outlets began speculating on the real reason behind Brad's decision. Some suggested it was a carefully calculated move to reclaim control over his narrative, others implied it might signal a growing frustration with media intrusion into his personal life. Analysts debated whether this stunt would bolster his image as an assertive, boundary-setting star, or alienate fans who expect openness from public figures. Brad himself remained silent for several hours, a rarity for someone constantly in the media spotlight. Then, late in the afternoon, his representatives released a statement. Brad Pitt respects the work of journalists and the right of the public to be informed. However, there are lines that should not be crossed, even in the pursuit of information. This morning's conversation touched on areas that are personal and private, and Brad made a decision to step away rather than compromise his dignity or that of others involved. The statement, calm and concise, only fueled speculation further. Media analysts praised its diplomacy but noted that it also reinforced Brad's stance on privacy. Meanwhile, George Stephanopoulos appeared on a separate segment later that evening, addressing the incident with measured professionalism. "Interviews are conversations," George explained. "Sometimes they get tense, that's part of live television. I respect Brad's choice, but our goal is always to seek transparency and provide audiences with insight. That remains our commitment." Public opinion was sharply divided. On one side, fans praised Brad for asserting his boundaries and refusing to be pushed into uncomfortable territory. On the other, critics claimed that walking out was unprofessional and avoided accountability. Entertainment news shows spent hours debating the incident, replaying clips in slow motion to analyze body language and tone, as if every eye roll or half-smile could reveal a hidden message. But amidst the chaos, a deeper narrative began to emerge. Close friends of Brad suggested that the star had been increasingly frustrated with invasive reporting, particularly regarding his personal life and relationships. "Brad has always been thoughtful about what he shares," one source said. "He's generous with stories about his projects, but he doesn't owe anyone access to his private world. That line gets blurred too often." In Hollywood circles, the incident sparked a broader conversation about celebrity privacy and the ethics of media scrutiny. Some actors cited Brad's stand as a model for protecting oneself in an era where personal lives are often treated as public property. Others warned that refusing to engage could backfire, creating a perception of secrecy or arrogance. Meanwhile, social media buzzed with every imaginable theory. Was the walkout a strategic PR move? A spontaneous act of frustration? Or perhaps a subtle protest against what Brad considers the erosion of personal boundaries in celebrity culture? The ambiguity only made the story hotter. By the next morning, talk shows across the nation dedicated segments to the GMA incident, inviting experts, fans, and media critics to weigh in. Analysts praised Brad's calmness under pressure, noting that he maintained composure and avoided overt confrontation, even as tensions escalated. "That's mastery of public relations," one commentator remarked. "He didn't lash out, he didn't insult, but he made a statement that millions immediately understood." As the dust settled, it became clear that this was more than just a heated interview, it was a turning point in Brad Pitt's public persona. No longer just the charming Hollywood icon, he emerged as a figure willing to stand up for personal boundaries, even at the cost of temporary controversy. For Good Morning America, the incident was a lesson in unpredictability. For the audience, it was a dramatic spectacle that blurred the line between entertainment and real-life tension. And for Brad Pitt, it was a reminder that even in a world obsessed with fame and scrutiny, one could still walk away on one's own terms. The headlines promised one thing: the story wasn't over. Interviews, commentary, and speculation would continue, but the image of Brad Pitt calmly standing up and walking out remained etched in public memory, a symbol of control, dignity, and a refusal to be cornered. And somewhere, in the midst of all the chaos, Brad moved forward, focusing not on the controversy, but on his work, his passions, and the projects that mattered most to him, a quiet victory that no headline could fully capture.